All right, what's going on, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen? I am here with a fantastic dev who has a great game coming out, and they're supporting a console that I love. For anybody that doesn't know, I'm a big Vita fan. I've been through way too many. So, Benjamin, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the game you're working on currently?
Yep, I'm Benjamin Widdowson. I'm the co-founder of Suzaku Games, and we are making Sense, a Cyberpunk ghost story. We kickstarted a year and a half ago or so, and got 600% funding, and are now getting very close to the home stretch on development and hoping to release in early spring of 2020.
What other platform? I know you're releasing on other platforms. What other platforms besides Vita are you doing? And
So
we'll get into the Vita portion in a bit.
everything current. So it should be PS4, Vita, PC, which will be Mac and Windows. Linux is coming eventually, probably. I don't want to 100% say that, but we plan on it. We just don't have anybody who has a Linux to test with, so it's an issue. But we'll worry about that later. And then Switch, Xbox One, and I suppose that means it would be on Xbox, that Game Pass thingy, whatever they have that they call that thing. So yeah, we're trying to get it out to as many places as possible.
Do note that this is actually being done on Linux.
You're okay, so I might be able to ask you to if you're up for it. We can't pay you, but we can. You get the game early, I guess.
I already kickstarted. I did a backer kit twice, actually.
So, well, then there you go. So you'll get the main version, and I'll get back in touch with you about testing a Linux version for us. So.
Because I did notice in the Steam forums for your Steam page, which is up for an early 2020 release, yes. Correct?
Yes.
That question already popped up.
It's a difficult one. Linux is, I had it in college 10 years ago, and it was one of those things where you used it when you had to use it,
yeah,
and I never stuck with it, so I don't even know what to do anymore. I don't remember how to get that kind of stuff set up. So we'll figure that out. We do intend to do a Linux release. I just don't know totally.
So for the Linux gaming people that actually watch my channel, all like 1,500 of you or whatever, potential Linux build coming, that's not guaranteed.
Yes, if and when it happens, I'd like to, because I know we do have we have been asked this a lot. If and when it comes, it'll be after the core release, unless some crazy thing happens where we can get a testable, rig up and working.
Well, do you know? Real Linux gamers, speaking as one, will not care about if it's native or if it's Steam Proton, DXVK, whatever you want to call it. They're not going to care. Can they play it on their system? That's all we care about.
And that helps me, because as long as if I can find a way to make it work and work well, we'll do it for you guys.
Awesome. Love to hear it. And totally open for testing.
yeah. I'll get in touch with you on Twitter.
Right. Appreciate it. Okay, so moving on. Do you want to give a little back history about your involvement in the gaming industry? You don't have to go into a whole lot of depth, but just kind of so people get to know the developer behind Sense.
Yeah, sure. So I went to SCAD and graduated in 2010. That's Savannah College of Art and Design. I don't recommend it unless you love debt. If you love debt, it's great. It's awesome. Graduated 2010, got my bachelor's in fine arts. I actually went for illustration, but I did take courses in game design and hung out with the game design guys, thinking that would be the best thing for a concept artist, would be to have the illustration skills. It was not a great choice. But I got out of school. I moved to Seattle to try to kind of hobnob with the industry people and get in there. I made a few friends. Things happened, more or less. I ended up starting my non-retail career in broadcast with Nico Nico Video, the basically Japanese YouTube, and jumped from there to a game company called Daily Magic Productions, which is a Russian/Ukrainian developer that worked with Big Fish Games at the time. So for 4 years, I was the lead concept artist and one of the lead writers at Daily Magic, and handled a whole lot of stuff, was doing game design for them. I worked on about 18 projects, and 3 of those one was a VR game that they've released, and I did very little work for it, but I still did something for it called The Witching Tower. I did like really early preliminary stuff, so I don't even know if I'm actually credited on that. Probably am. And then I did stuff for a couple mobile titles that I'm not sure ever came to the US. And then the rest were all the hidden object games you see on Big Fish Games. Wrote 16 or 17 of those, and did all the game design and stuff like that. So I had a long time working in those type of games, getting my teeth cut on hidden object and puzzle adventure, and was constantly trying to kind of push them towards more AAA or more mainstream hardcore gaming, and didn't quite work out as well in most cases. Big Fish has a very specific market, and I was probably trying to push them in a direction that wasn't good for Big Fish. And eventually, my boss and I, who we're still friends, we're still close, and just decided it wasn't something where I was going to grow anymore. And so she put me kind of on a back burner doing art, and then I eventually just was done. So my contract ended, and my wife said, I had a couple of weeks of trying to search for jobs and doing the interview thing, and I would rant like every day to my wife, who was at the time still in Hong Kong, about how the AAA industry sucks and all those problems. She finally just told me to shut up and make a game. So she helped me out with that. She gave me a couple months free of rent, and I just focused on Sense, and I started writing more of the specific game. I'd had this IP and this world kind of built for multiple years beforehand.
Very nice. I always enjoy hearing like how people come up in the industry. Being in that space is always interesting. I've interviewed devs in AA, AAA, indie, call it whatever terminology the industry is currently using. As someone, because what would you say is generally the proper way for people to track into that, in like that portion of the industry, like the standard, the norm, whatever you want to call it? Not hearing anything.
You there? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. What I lost you at? You were asking me generally how do people track into that industry, I think.
Yes. Yeah. I'll edit. There will be portions I edit, like stuff.
Sorry about that.
Stuff like that. No, stuff like that happens. It's all good.
So let me keep the chat up just in case it crashes again. I would say the best, don't do what I did. First of all, if you're in high school or you're at a community college getting your basics out of the way, I don't know if college is necessary. If you go to a place like LCAD that my wife was going to, and that's Laguna College of Art and Design. It's like right outside of Irvine where Blizzard is. You're basically getting fast tracked into Blizzard if you're good. But my personal experience and personal opinion is that the AAA industry specifically is very much so a nepotistic who you know game. People who aren't necessarily qualified to be in their positions on all levels will get there just because they've been there for a long time or they've known the right people for a long time. And varying versions of that same thing that I'm not saying that I deserved any job, because when I came out of SCAD I definitely wasn't ready, but there are problems with hiring in the game industry. So I would say the best thing you can do right now, if you're in high school or college or whatever, is don't put yourself into debt. Start paying attention to the big names in the industry as they are. Look at what they do wrong and look at what's successful for them. Figure out where in that industry you want to be and start really pushing to be better than them. So I'm friends with a guy named Anthony Jones. He's one of the bigger concept artists in film and games. He's a really good guy. The idea would be that if you want to be in film and doing kind of monster stuff, you want to be better than Anthony Jones. You want to kick his ass at design and be able to show that, and start hanging out on forums for art. Start getting on, I hate to sound like a boomer, but Facebook groups and stuff like that. Anywhere you can be in contact with people in this industry, and finding ways to show off to them that, don't be a dick, but be like, show them that you have the skill sets, that you are someone that should be sitting next to them in the office. And that's 9 times out of 10 going to be the better way to get you the job faster. That's what I've seen from people around me. That's what's led to me getting some contract gigs and stuff like that, is just who you know. It's not healthy. I don't think it's the right answer for how to get new, good talent into this industry. And I think it is causing problems. But right now, that's the best way to do it, I think.
I think that's some great advice. Having been doing the journalism, I use that term very loosely, and of the video game stuff since like 2012, like I've seen a lot of to be crass, unfortunately, the who you know and who you blow kind of mentality. Mm-hmm. And I'm it is what it is. Unfortunately, I have found that working in corporate America in general, that's usually the mentality regardless.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think the one being an open source guy, and looking at tech companies that are like that, like Red Hat and all the other jazz, I think one of the things companies appreciate more, not necessarily the AAA guys, more of maybe the AA's and I hate the term indies because it's not accurate, but the smaller publishing houses and devs and et cetera that don't have those, Call of Duty budgets. I think that you guys generically probably appreciate people who have a portfolio that they can put out in front of you and say, hey, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this. And it doesn't have to necessarily be, stuff that is, how do I say that? Like if you wrote an open source program and you can go to as part of your portfolio, you can be like, oh yeah, I wrote that. It's the same thing with like, oh, I did this artwork, I did that artwork, and not even go the traditional route of, college and debt and try to get in the industry through that way. And I think a body of work to present already is probably something that is a different route that not enough people take, unfortunately, because I remember, I think it was one of the modders for I think it was Fallout New Vegas got hired by Obsidian. It's stuff like that I find interesting, because it's stuff that they can point to.
Right. And I think that would be, if you don't want to be in, like, I have no interest in being in the AAA industry. If some company came to me and was like, hey, here's $200,000 a year, I probably would take it, because duh. But I don't know if I would like jump out of my skin to try to get one of those jobs anymore. But the best way, if you just want to be making games and you want to do good, I mean, we're seeing with Patreon and these different crowdfunding platforms that, like, you can just do it. You don't need some giant corporation to tell you like what your project is worth, or how much you should get paid, or if you're good enough to match up with some guy that's been making terribly selling boring games for 15 years. You can just make a game. If you have an idea, Unity's free. It's Unreal is, pretty sure it's free. Yeah. They're all, there's so many options for you to get out there. I mean, even RPG Maker, I still have a soft spot for RPG Maker games. As much as people shit on them, I think they're a blast, and they have so many good ideas are coming out of that stuff every single day. Just do it. Just get out there, get GIMP or get whatever you need to make a game and just start. There's no need to put yourself in debt or do any of that stuff to get validation from an industry that in my personal opinion, is about to burn to the ground. So
are we going to be seeing an 83 crash all over again?
I wouldn't bet money on it, because I have bad luck with gambling, and God will spite me for putting money on it, and it'll start flourishing. But yeah, I personally think that the AAA industry is on its way to its knees, and there's so many things they could do to stop it or fix it or change it. And it seems like they have that list and they're actively doing the opposite. It's like they're going, oh yeah, let's stop doing this thing, and then the other guy goes, no, don't do it more. It's crazy.
All I'm gonna say as far as AAA is, why is it there's only one company that I see doing anything right, and that is CD Projekt. As far as how they treat the consumer end of things. Let me rephrase that.
I would say I don't know much about them past obviously the few games they've made that are obviously very good and acclaimed by critically and commercially. But I would say that it could just be the right people there. It could be a mentality of their nationality. It could be a cultural thing. I'm not sure what makes them stick to their guns on the right things sometimes. But I do question how long that's going to last. So, but I'm very pessimistic when it comes to these giant companies. So I don't know.
In fairness, I can't necessarily say I blame you. I mean, given history, but I mean, unless GOG, who CD Projekt owns, changes, that I'm really not too worried at the moment. Though,
right, I'm not super worried about CD Projekt screwing anybody over anytime soon, but I always have that little like nagging where I'm like, they could heel turn tomorrow and we would all be hurt. So
yeah, which CD Projekt, thank you for doing what you do. Anyway,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Please continue. As a consumer and a gamer, I love it. I love I love the fact that I don't feel like here's my wallet. Please open it. Please open it and take some more.
I'll say this: I would give them a lot more money, a lot faster if Cyberpunk 2077 had third-person mode. That would be helpful for me.
Yeah,
but I can take a few months here and there. So
yeah, the first person in scene thing. I don't know how I feel with that, but anyway, on back to specifically you. Why don't you explain a little bit about Sense and I'm a big Cyberpunk fan. One of my favorite games in the last probably 4 years was actually an indie game from Dreadlocks called Dex. It's another Cyberpunk game. It's like a 2.5D open world side scrolling action RPG Cyberpunk theme.
People tell me to play this all the time, and I still haven't gotten around to it.
Great game.
I've heard nothing but good things. So I think after Sense is done, I'll give it a shot.
Just the Vita port's a little wonky, but I think that's more the touch stuff more than anything else. Just an FYI. Okay. But why don't you tell a little bit about Sense and your version of Cyberpunk and where it's set and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so the Shirotech IP I'd been, like I mentioned a little earlier, was like I've been developing that for years, since like probably 2013 or so, and maybe a little earlier. It's something I've always kind of been working on since I was a kid, and didn't really have a known name or anything like that for it until about 2012, 2013. And what I wanted was, so I'm kind of a hardcore capitalist. I'm not an oligarchist or whatever the word for that is. Like, I'm not a corporatist. So part of me sits there and sometimes sees capitalism, or not capitalism, cyberpunk as a very left-wing, consistently left-wing ideology, pushed into it. I don't necessarily think that is necessary. I keep saying necessary and I'm getting annoyed with myself. But I think you can take those kind of ideas and look at what's happening right now in our world, and it doesn't have to be like the same ideas and the same stories every single time. It doesn't have to be the evil mega corporation controls everything and they're super bad and starve, and people are starving because of the wealth of the 1%. Like, it doesn't always have to be that. There are millions of stories you could tell in similar universes, and I wanted to kind of create that thing. Because I might hate Google or I might hate Apple personally. I think they're terrible, terrible corporations, and Google's listening to me right now say that. So they're terrible corporations run by terrible people that in their mind are socially restructuring the world in their image, and that's fine. Whatever. I mean, I can't stop them, so all I can do is complain about it. But it doesn't. it's weird to me that we live in this world where that's happening, and those the same people that are constantly freaking about evil corporations really like Google and really like Apple and really like Amazon, like all these giant companies. So I wanted to kind of create something different where you go, well, what if there was a corporation that was super big like Google that owned everything, and it has that bad side of complete monopoly over basically everything there is to buy, but it's actually run by a single guy who legitimately does try to do the right things. And that's where Shirotech kind of came from, was this idea of this guy that's like, I've had enough of the way everybody else does things and the way that the world was run prior to World War III. And I'm going to do a better version of everything. And I'm going to make things good for everyone and inexpensive. And this isn't me saying like he's right or wrong. It was me going, what if that was the case? This guy really truly believes he's doing that thing, and maybe it causes problems, but also, you know, maybe it does some good things. And I wanted to kind of delve into a different type of cyberpunk and consider what kind of world and society that would create, where you're going, most people don't really have anything to complain about. Things are so good, you know, but then there are still people that are poor, because that's going to happen. Like, you can't get past that in humanity. So I wanted to kind of just create that world space and see what would happen as I tried to write different types of stories within it, as opposed to create like an overarching narrative where these things have to happen. All I did was build a giant time frame, or a like chronological list of events that had to happen. And then I wanted to inject stories into each of those events, like time periods. So, you know, eventually I want to do a game or a comic that's set during World War III or World War IV. It's really strongly military action kind of stuff. And then maybe I want to do a cop game that's set in, you know, Neo Hong Kong in right around the time of Sense, and see what cops would be doing or how they would be acting. And it was more about creating a believable breathing world in my head that I could write down and create different things, and let anything that I create prior, let that kind of solidify what I would have to create in a different instance. So if Sense happens in 2083 in August, and now I could, you know, anything I write after that, the bar that she's in can no longer be used because of an event that happens or something like that, you know, and then can, you know, pull that out to the larger scale. If something happens because Shirotech does this one thing or creates this one thing, it will definitely create this other opportunity for me to write about something elsewhere, or cancel out an opportunity here. It's very confusing and hard to word, I understand, but that was kind of the general gist of what I wanted to go with. And then as I created that, one of the big things I wanted to do with the whole universe was allow the paranormal to exist, because I've always kind of been frustrated with sci-fi. Sci-fi kind of killed God, if that's like a fun way to put it, is that no matter what sci-fi thing you read or look at or watch or whatever, there's always like this very much like science is the God thing. And, you know, sci-fi horror will almost always go to Lovecraftian style. There's these giant things that have existed for thousands of years that are omnipotent or, you know, all powerful, and they make you go insane, or it's aliens, or it's a computer virus, or it's, you know, it's whatever that is a believable structured thing. But I wanted to take that paranormal aspect and go, just because if the things exist now, if I believe in ghosts now, why would people in a cyberpunk future not believe in ghosts? So I wanted to bridge that gap there that hasn't really been delved into before, and push it as far as I could and see what would ghosts be like in a cyberpunk setting. And then that's where Sense like just started kind of coming together. And when I lost the job and my wife convinced me to make a game, I knew that was the first one I wanted to go with, was tell this cyberpunk ghost story that it hasn't been done yet. No one's ever done ghosts in a cyberpunk or, you know, setting like that. And through massaging and working with that story, it eventually, you know, different aspects happened between my wife talking about it and where we wanted to go, that it went from a Japanese ghost story in, you know, Neo Tokyo to Hong Kong, because my wife's from Hong Kong, and she was like, why don't we just do something different? You love Fatal Frame, you love, you know, Ju-on and all these Japanese things. Why not Hong Kong? And I didn't have any real answer. I was just like, because I like Japan. Like, Japan's cool. And she was like, well, let me show you Hong Kong. And she explained all these things that I had never heard of or never seen, or, you know, maybe I saw them in an old Gordon Liu movie or something, but I didn't really know what they were. And it was so fascinating and interesting. And I realized that hasn't been done in games yet. You know, you have Jiangxi, the hopping ghosts every now and then, but you don't have like all the other Cantonese stuff that's really specifically deeply Hong Kong culture that no one ever talks about. And I was like, how do I get these digestible and feed them to Americans and to Westerners? And we worked on that for the longest period of time. And then, you know, eventually since just the first iterations of it hit, and we were, you know, we tried our first Kickstarter and it was about that same time. Like the first Kickstarter was very bare bones, and I had things written down, but it was nowhere near ready and nowhere near done. And that extra however many months like cooked it into what we see today. So
Very nice. I was gonna say, I always enjoy hearing like the backstories about like how these worlds come together, and I think it's cool that you kind of have like a living, breathing world, but you're also looking at potentially different, not just mediums, you know, like you mentioned a comic and that kind of stuff, but also like different branches within that medium. So like, say in a sense, something happens and like this particular portion of this world is not accessible in the next game that might, you know, take place around that. Like a breathing world, you know, basically if a building gets condemned in one game, oh, hey, it might be condemned in the next one.
Exactly.
Like that kind of, that to me is cool and very rarely done.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the most important part to me, is that as I, you know, because with this giant timeline, it's about 150 years of events. And I went, these are the things that I personally think are going to happen in the next 150 years with some tweaking, you know, for fantastic, awesome, you know, things that I think something similar is going to happen, but not as cool as I wrote it. You know, it's going to be really, the real version's going to be really boring. But, you know, like if I believe that North Korea and China are going to merge, you know, going to have some kind of partnership, in real life, that'll be really boring. But my version is like, no, they're a super state now, you know, and then they start blowing people up. Like that's the version I wrote. So the real version is going to suck and it's going to be not cool. But, you know, Sense version's kind of badass.
Speaking of, so let's get specifically more into Sense in and of itself as a game. How would you describe Sense in like the traditional genre type of games?
Well, I mean, the tagline being a cyberpunk ghost story is, you know, they obviously like the narrative genre, but the game genre, that's the thing I've actually been having a hard time with, because I'm trying to think of a way I've been having a hard time because I just did another interview, like with the one where they email you the questions.
Mm-hmm.
I had to sit there for like 20 minutes, like figuring out how I want to word this. When I was crafting Sense in my head, Fatal Frame was the biggest inspiration. That was like the key point that I kept imagining and playing the games over and over again. And so when I first was crafting this idea, I thought doing 3D character models was gonna be a lot easier than it is. So I was thinking like, okay, my wife can handle the environment art and I'll handle the characters and everything will be cool. And I'm dumb. So, you know, that didn't work out. That was, you know, since it ended up having to be 2D. And one of the saving graces for that was that a lot of people really loved my art. So even when we suggested like, hey, we want to do this as a 3D game, everybody kept telling us, no, I want 2D. So the entire game design was done very, I guess, holistically was the correct word. It was done like I did it with Big Fish Games and Daily Magic, where, you know, I had interaction chains, and it doesn't really matter how you move around to do those chains. So 2D or 3D, it didn't really hurt to make it one or the other. There's really nothing that affected from a game design perspective. When I realized that, I was like, well, I guess this whole game can be in 2D. It really doesn't have to be 3D. And knowing that people like my art, which was really like huge for me because I've had such a hard time in the industry and in getting jobs, I was like, okay, so I don't suck. You know, apparently I'm not bad at this. So it was a nice slight ego boost. And we just realized, you know, me talking to Joe, the publisher, and Andy, and sitting down going, okay, 2D is most definitely the way to go for now. In the future, I definitely want to do 3D, but 2D. And that's where I realized, like, as we started polishing the gameplay chains and figuring out exactly what it was, survival horror isn't necessarily a fair name, a fair descriptor, because you're not like it's survival horror in the sense that Clock Tower was. I mean, people consider Clock Tower survival horror, but it's actually more of a puzzle game or an adventure game. It's more of a point and click adventure. So I would definitely put it somewhere in like adventure horror or something along those lines. I feel like there needs to be like a different genre for Clock Tower for the original ones anyway, and Sense and a couple other games that have popped up. I think what's it called? Detention was a good example of it's that puzzle adventure horror game kind of thing, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking, you spoke on the art. I love the art.
Thank you.
I think it's great. Ordered both posters actually.
Oh, thank you.
The art style has been described, at least by your own wording, at least on Twitter anyway. Not necessarily you, but like the game account is waifu. Now, this is very much a divisive art style because you got the Japanese version of waifu, which is Dead or Alive, basically, is usually the poster child for that. Mm-hmm. And then you have this version of waifu, which is different. What is it about that type of art style to the San Francisco elite that is so like reprehensible? I don't understand like this snobbery of looking down at this art style. Is it just because it's not like the PC correct version of art, or within their limited, I'm going to be frank, dumbass view of the world?
This is actually interesting, and I have to put my tinfoil hat on a little bit because I've been mulling over this for months, like probably years now, trying to figure out what that is and what's causing the backlash. And we talked a minute ago about the Sony censorship and all these issues going on, particularly with video games and anime, where to me, my personal opinion, I could be wrong. This could be my tinfoil hat. I don't know. I read it very much so as an actual like intentional attack on what most people see as the general world beauty standard. And I don't want to get too into the political weeds and start screaming about Marxism or anything, but it's very interesting to watch. I talk to my wife about this stuff all the time because I don't know if you're married, but like, you sometimes get in discussions about what is beautiful, and her things about how much she weighs or whatever. She might think she's chubbier than I think she is, and she's from Hong Kong, so that beauty standard is extreme. It's very like, if you're a female and you're not 90 pounds, you're fat, and if you're 110 pounds, you're a pig. And it's like, okay, that's really weird. That's insane. Like, but to them, that's normal. That's like their standard. So, but I think that over the whole world, there is a general medium. You have like individual outliers where some people like really, obese or overweight women, and some people like really skinny girls. There's always going to be those outliers or subcultures or whatever you want to call them. Mm-hmm. But I've noticed, particularly in Western design, that there's this weird erasing of what 99% of the world would consider beautiful. And I can use my wife as an example again. She loves Angelina Jolie. She thinks the Tomb Raider movies with Angelina Jolie, she is the most beautiful woman. She's perfect. And I can't disagree with the fact that Angelina Jolie in her prime is still a beautiful woman, but was like, a 10. She's Angelina freaking Jolie. And we have the Tomb Raider reboot games where we have Laura get increasingly uglier and more masculine. And I can't personally see that as anything other than intentional, because it's happening across the entire spectrum with comic books, with cartoons, with it's this weird thing where what most normal, healthy, sane, happy human beings would consider beautiful is not allowed anymore, or is shunned, or is offensive, or something like that. And for me, with the waifu stuff, I grew up in the early 90s. I grew up watching the the good movies, Stallone, and seeing things like
Demolition Man.
yeah, Demolition Man, and Cobra, and all these like amazing things that I grew up with, where you have these Herculean, like Greek style heroes that I looked up to. And for women, you had a full spectrum. You had beautiful women in movies like, I don't think she's that attractive, but Julia Roberts. Everybody likes Julia Roberts. Who dislikes, like, what is there to dislike about Julia Roberts? She has a huge mouth, but whatever. Like, she's a lovable person, like actress, and she's beautiful. And people go, ooh, I want to look like her, or I want to look like this. And I don't see those as problems. I see those as like ideals where you try to get as close to them as possible. When I was in college, I worked out a lot to try to get that, the Jason Statham style look and try to be ripped. And I've been doing martial arts since I was like 12 years old. So I'm fat now, but I didn't used to be. So it's that, and I got fat because of having to develop sets. So that's why it had nothing else. But the interesting thing is watching that breakdown and watching how things have shifted towards this really weird version of like, if I, the person who's critiquing this media, can't look like this, then it shouldn't exist. All these heroes need to look like me. And that person who's saying that happens to be like a 40-year-old cat lady. So I don't know what's causing, I have my ideas, but without getting too into the weeds on that stuff, I think it's just a giant intentional attack. So for me, when I was making sense and looking at all these things and looking at what makes me happy, the anime, the video games, the things, there was always that over the top fun nature of everything, whether it was, Stallone in Cobra being ridiculous and being awesome, and, shooting double Uzis with laser, like that's cool. And then, or if you're watching, Power Rangers and you see all 5 of the original Power Rangers are beautiful people. The dudes are good looking and they're jacked and they're supposed to be 16-year-olds, but they're like 25-year-olds.
They're like 25-year-olds.
Yeah. And then the women are, beautiful, like bikini model girls, but they're still people that you could identify with and be like, well, they're heroes. I like that. And that's always what I wanted to see brought back. And especially in the past few years. So for me, I wanted to latch on to those things I loved from the early 90s and late 80s. And because they've always brought me joy and always made me aspire to something bigger, or try to make, better myself in one way or another. And I felt like if I just keep that idea, people will look at my game, and whether or not they think it's scary or not, or, whether or not they're into girls with, big boobs or small boobs, they'll look at it and be like, ooh, I like this character. I like that character. And not like designing things for cosplay like Marvel does, but like that idea of, I want people to look at a ridiculous character I make and be like, I want to see that character in real life, or I want to look like that character. That's the kind of way I like to design things.
Which, that's the thing that I like, is especially about Sense, is you have a very focused design, you have a very focused way of how you want to present things, and it's a game that you want to make.
Yes.
And in spite of all the double standards of the be it criticisms from within the industry, criticisms from the journalist, I would, that are overglorified PR people, and their criticism of anything. I mean, just look at it, like IGN's recent post about like complaining about Call of Duty's kill streaks and stuff. Like, can we just? These are games that are supposed to be telling stories. It's about having fun. And I think and the thing that I love about specifically Sense is that you have a story you want to tell. You have a world you want to show. It's here it is. Judge it for what it is, not for how you want to see it. This is how I see it. And I think that's where a lot of like reviewers get things wrong. Like when they review a game, it's not about how you want to see it. It's how close to the goal did the developer get to where they were trying to aim. That to me is how you should be reviewing and looking at things. And I think a lot of the journalists tend to miss that by projecting themselves into it. And newsflash, I don't care about what you want. I want to care about what the developer are trying to make this game wanted to do, and whether or not they made it or succeeded. And that's it.
Right. And I think that's actually a really good like jumping off point for something is that not every game I make is going to have this type of visual or this type. I think most of them will, because it's just the way I like to draw things and the way I personally create ideas and characters. Because if, you know, a lot of my male characters are like, again, are like Stallone. They're characters that look awesome. I have a boxer who I based off Kiefer Sutherland, but I gave him a six-pack, which I'm pretty sure Kiefer Sutherland has never had. You know, it's that kind of thing where I'm going, I want to make characters I think are awesome. Mm-hmm. And guys, girls, whatever version of that awesome is, I wanted people to see that, and I want people to be able to pick out every NPC in the game and go, ooh, that one's cool. I love this character. And I think with a lot of these reviewers and a lot of these cultural critics, or whatever you want to call them, they're so latched on to this idea that their version of the way things should be is correct, that they refuse to maybe listen when people say, well, hold on, that doesn't affect me in the way it would, you're saying it affects me, or it doesn't. I don't get that feeling. People would be very offended by, again, to stick with my old example, is Power Rangers. You know, the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, people would be extremely offended by that show today for all kinds of reasons. And we're like 2 weeks away from a Vox article if they do Power Rangers 2, like the new movies, you know, like at any point we're going to get that Vox article, and it's going to be like, here, the hidden problematic history of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And what I just remember is really cool heroes, and every single one of the main characters was somebody I thought was cool. And if I was playing with friends, you know, on the kindergarten or the first grade playground, and we decided to play Power Rangers, and they said, you have to be the Black Ranger, I didn't go, oh man, I don't want to be the black kid. I would be like, oh sweet, he's fucking Mammoth Power Ranger. like it was just whatever was cool. And I don't remember the characters who's the Black Power Ranger. I don't remember his name, but like
Zach.
before, was that because Johnny Young Bosch took over?
Yeah.
And I forget what his name was, but it's like, I was just like, oh yeah, the Black Power Ranger is awesome. He does that dance move, and he was a cool character, and it never crosses anybody's mind until people start making it a problem, and they're like, oh, well, the Black Power Ranger was played by a black guy, and you're like, what? Oh yeah, I guess he was. Like that's the normal person's reaction, is like, oh yeah, I guess he was. But they make it like it has to be this thing where you examine your you know, deeply held biases or some crap, and I'm just going, I just want to make something that looks awesome, that makes other people go, hey, that looks awesome, and it makes them smile. Or if with horror, like I want to make something that I think is really strong horror, and I want people to go, oh man, I was so scared of this one part. And I don't really care if someone writes a think piece on Medium about how we've subverted something or didn't subvert something or handled something, you know, incorrectly. I'd rather just keep telling the story the way that I think it should be told. And we're getting to a point where that's getting increasingly more difficult to do, as certain voices and certain people have more and more power in these industries. Luckily for them, I'm far too Asperger's-y and far too old to not do what I want to do. I really like fighting, so you know, I will argue all day, every day, and you're not going to beat me down on this. And so I'm just going to keep making these things and making them the way I want. If I make as I mentioned earlier, if I make a game about special ops guys in World War III, that might be a very serious Metal Gear Solid style take artistically. I might go more realistic look with that. I don't know if I would, but I don't know. Maybe I will. It would really be dependent on what I want to tell and how I want to see it. But if I make one of the games I want to make is a beach volleyball game with cyborg girls. So like wearing like mech kind of rigs, I guess. Mm-hmm. I don't know what way to put like an exosuit kind of thing. So if I make that game, of course, I'm going to go way further than sense on the lewd or the waifu aspect, like because that's the whole point. So I think people just get so hung up on these weird arguments about what should be acceptable or when it should be acceptable by their own definition, that they're not just willing to sit back and go, oh, you know what? Onechambara Bikini Zombie Slayers is an awesome game. It doesn't matter why she's wearing lingerie and a cowboy hat. It's just awesome. It's just cool. And that makes me happy. So that's what I want to make more of.
Which ironically, I own that.
I own all of them. It's one of my favorite because it's so ridiculous and fun, and that's all video games need to be, is fun. And if it puts a smile on my face or helps me get over a bad day at work or whatever, that's what I need. That I don't need a lecture about the rights of Nicaraguan cricket farmers. I really don't need that. I just need fun.
The thing is, there is a place to tell those kind of pick your story. Like one of my favorite games that tells us, a questioning story of like what soldiers go through and that kind of stuff was Spec Ops: The Line.
Right, it was an amazing game. Really good.
Really underrated, honestly. That to me is the right way to tell a story of that nature, like to give that perspective, to do those type of quote unquote think pieces. I guess those are the games you want to examine. The whole point of this medium, just like movies or music or anything else, is entertainment, and how can you relate to it? That's really what it boils down to. Is it fun? And I think we get so caught up in a lot of this stuff that we lose that sense. And that's why I like I said, I backed Sense twice, because I really enjoyed the fact that you have stuck to your guns, that this is the game I want to make. And be frank, it's one of those, I'll be damned whatever the outliers say. This is my game. And I can totally respect that. And I think that this design by committee for outside critics is hurting the gaming industry as a whole. And so it's refresh. I find it very refreshing. Like your publisher, Top Hat, has been very supportive of not just you, but also the other places that it's published, other games that it's publishing, as far as that mentality. And that is very refreshing to see. And you guys, I commend your publisher, you, and people who are trying to it's a creative medium. Let people create.
That's the most important thing is I look at games like Spec Ops: The Line, and I think of actually the Medal of Honor reboot from like 2011 and how meaningful that was, because I'm the son of my dad was in the military, my brother's in the military, like my grandpa, my uncles. I'm a military kid, and it was a meaningful game to me because it really did show some things that were really beautiful and interesting, and made you kind of, it was hard not to get choked up, but I'm a man and I don't cry, so it was like, yeah, okay, this is a good game. But most people didn't like that game as much as I did. So I think you're right. There's video games can be anybody who wants to, if they who shall not be named want to make a video game about that looks like a Zelda ripoff, but the girl is wearing purple and she doesn't save a princess, she saves herself. Like, if she wants to make that game, I want her to make that game. I want that game to exist, and I want to play it because it might be fun. If it's good, that's all I like. And if it's fun, that's really the only thing that should matter. And if they want to tell a story that's really meaningful, I'm trying to think I don't remember the name of it, but it was about like people that were just normal civilians in a war-torn area. It was like
This War of Mine.
Yes, like, make that. Good for you. Like, maybe it might not be my thing, but I might, you never know. Maybe I want to play it one day. I think people should, if you want to make the most political game you can make, you go for it. Do it and put everything you have into it and make it as damn good as possible. Kojima figured out how to strike that balance by telling a very decent war story and tell those and kind of put his political perspectives in without saying Americans are terrible, evil monsters who bomb the world. Like, he didn't say it like that. And it was a thing where he let people who maybe are jingoistic or patriotic like me and go, okay, yeah, we do some stuff that's kind of shitty, and I can look at it and go, but I still love these characters and I still love this story, and I was still affected by it in different ways. And it didn't feel like I was being called the asshole. And I think that's the biggest thing, is anybody who wants to make a game, no matter how they want to make it or what they want to make it about, I want them to do that. And there are so many tools and so many opportunities. And frankly, the people that want to make those hyper political games have way more opportunities than people like me. They have way more backing and way more, they they can get more funding and more notice on their game than I can on mine for specific reasons. And I go, that's fine. That's how things are. I'm not complaining. I'm not going to try to force changes. I just want to make my game, you know? It's very interesting to see how weird things have gotten in this way in the past 5-6 years. But at the end of the day, what's going to happen is most of my customers is what's going to matter to me. They buy my game. They ask me for something. I'll try to do what they ask me to do. There's certain things I won't change on. I've had people ask me to reduce the size of May's breasts. I'm not doing that. Like, for everyone who's asked me and didn't get an email reply yet, I'm not doing that. It's not happening because I don't see a valid reason to do such a thing. But if you say, hey, I'd really like this game on Linux through this platform, I'll look into it and see what we can do and make it happen. Because as long as it's something that doesn't contradict or break my vision for the game that I'm trying to give you, that I know is a good game and I know has a good story or know has good art direction, trust me on the parts that I'm good at, and I'll trust you on the how you want to play it, how you want to experience it. That's my kind of personal mission here. And you can, I've gotten plenty of them. You can send me 100 angry emails about my objectification of women or all of that stuff. You can note that my wife is 50% co-founder of Suzaku and is involved in every step of this and likes what I'm doing. So, you know, I've got one on my side too. So I guess that's good enough for me. And we have tons of women that are supporting the game through Kickstarter. So yeah, I just don't see the arguments, and I don't think it's good for the industry and for the medium as a whole to keep kowtowing to weird political activists instead of customers. And I just want to sell to people that want to buy my game. I don't want to sell to people that are going to complain about my game and then probably not buy it. And that's what matters to me is who has their wallet open and who's throwing money at me. I guess it sounds really, really bad. I know, but I mean that in the most sincere and loving way possible.
No, like I said, that's why, again, so for those that are wondering, yes, I am personally invested in this because I have invested my own money. You know, my thing is I support the ones that, as a gamer, as a customer, I support the ones that are looking to put out their vision. All the ancillary weird crap that's outside of it. Now, is there stuff that, you know, you can make the argument that there are games that are done in poor taste?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, like there's a difference, or games that are just done out of spite. You know, you have games like what was it, Hatred, that came out, you know, 2 or 3 years ago, where literally the whole thing is it's just Postal, but you go around killing people and that did nothing to you. Like the whole shtick, it's a shtick, and if you can't see that, I question your ability to judge things. You know, there are other games that, you know, about like mass shootings and a bunch of others. Like, those are games that are done in poor taste. Those are different. And that, I think that's the line people can't see, because their senses of what poor taste is reflected by their idealism or their ideology, and not by like basic human understanding and interaction, which is a lot of the problem. So again, thank you for sticking to your vision. Thank you for making the game that you want to make, and having a publisher that is supportive of that. I really wish there was more than there is.
I think, and I don't know the right way to respond to that. Thank you for thanking me. Joe is a really good guy, and Joe is someone, you know, I'm not. It's kind of interesting. Like Suzaku, we're never going to do porn games, and Top Hat was basically I don't mean to disparage Joe at all. It basically was like an adult only publisher at first. And I think I was one of his, if not the first game that had no intention of ever doing adult stuff. So for him to see something in me, something with my project that he was interested in, and then kind of shift what he's doing a little bit was really was big for me, because I went, okay, this guy who has made money on stuff sees an opportunity here and believes in my product, and he has been nothing but helpful and supportive and pushed and given money when we need it, and done what he can to help. And I'm really excited to go forward with him in the future and help him grow. I think his store is called Hat Rack, and I don't know when they launch that, but it should be pretty soon, where he's doing his own platform just because they're tired of getting things pulled off of Steam. And I think he's going to be one of those guys that is doing what my wife and I want to do, which is kind of reset a new end of the industry, like create some new. I've said it before, kind of in angry rants, where I say like the B movie industry or the sci-fi originals industry of games. Like, nobody sits there and says that sci-fi movies are insanely good quality with great acting. No one's saying that, but they're really fun to watch sometimes. Sharknado wouldn't be the billion-dollar hit that it is if it wasn't for how fun they are. Like, they're stupid. They're incredibly stupid, but they're also awesome. Like, it's just so stupidly awesome. And I feel like with games, there's got to be people that will, like me, that I don't want to make something of that. I don't mean this badly, low quality. I want to make something that is every bit as good or better than a AAA game in terms of technical skill and quality, and then actually beat the shit out of them on narrative and character designs and storytelling and all of those things that I think they're lacking personally. So I think we can do that in a new end. And Joe is one of the first people that kind of like agreed with me on that. And my wife and Andy, who's also a great guy, really supportive, and has really pushed me on certain things, and is pushing himself further than I've ever heard any of his music go on since. He's doing an incredible job. And with us, we're just one small group. And I know there's more people out there that want to make games the way we want to make games. And I miss those days of Dreamcast and PS2. I want to bring back that mid-level developer spending very, as enough money, but not too much money. You know what I mean? Like, spend what you need to make the game, but you don't need a $200 million budget of bloat and bullshit that cripples your studio if you don't sell 50 million units of the freaking game. I don't need to hit Call of Duty numbers. I need to hit, good numbers. I need to hit enough numbers to fill my wallet back up after I spent everything. And I think that's where we want to go. And Joe is right there with us. So I think as we grow, and you guys, by you supporting and doing two backing, and hopefully your listeners and all of their friends, if I'm not saying this to give me money, I'm saying this because if you guys help us grow, we can build something bigger, and we can build something that gives you games you are interested in. Because if you sit there and you go to GameStop and you look at the shelf and you're like, all of this is boring or derivative or gray, or whatever the problem is this week, or you feel like you're getting bilked by a bunch of AAA companies over loot boxes and subscription games and games as a service and all this bullshit, you can help people like me make classic titles again and get those old school vibes of when I sell you a game and you take it home and you have a physical copy, there's no update, there's no DLC. You have the complete game, and for as long as those discs or chips or whatever they are will last in your storage shed or whatever, it'll be playable and the whole game will be there. That's what I want to give you. That's what I want. I'm frustrated beyond belief with my hobby and with my passion here, and I'm going, how can I fix this, and what can I do to get it back to where I think it belongs? So if you agree with me on that, my Patreon is I don't have one yet. So just support us and support Joe, and we will, anybody that wants to be part of that and wants to hop in and make a game, contact us, get in contact with Joe and show us something you have. And if you want to do that, you can help us build a better, bigger industry.
And do note the backer kit link will be in the description. Yeah. Just saying.
I didn't put it there. He did. So.
And it's not a shameless self-plug if the host does it.
Yes, exactly.
So we've talked about some of the industry trends. We've talked about Sense. We've talked about what you're looking for. Where do you see yourself going once Sense as a game has launched? Like, what would you say is your next project? Is it the comic you mentioned? Is it another game? Is it what is it?
So I'm a game developer first and foremost. I've seen myself, I used to do comics. I tried. I actually got declined by Marvel, which is now hilarious. But it's one of those. I'm an artist, and I want to make things, but my passion is character design. It's not necessarily an exclusive because we've kind of teased it, and I've mentioned it before. But I'll give you a little bit of an exclusive. What's it called? Like a sneak peek, I guess you could call it. So Sense 2 is very much a thing. Sense is an IP. It's not just a single game, and we haven't shown much of Sense 1, and I've intentionally repeated what we've shown people through the demos and through clips and stuff, because horror is really important to me. I'm a bigger horror nerd than most other things. So I wanted to make a horror game that is legitimately as scary as you can get in a 2D side-scrolling game. I recognize that that's a very difficult. It was more difficult than I thought it was going to be, but it is difficult because you can see everything you need to see, and it's so art style intensive. There's all these issues that make doing effective horror in that space difficult, but I think we're pulling it off. So I don't want to share anything. So it's very difficult to be like, guys, trust me, 1 is going to be awesome. 2 is going to, I don't want to say 2 is going to be better or anything like that. It's difficult. 2 is happening. It is going to be full 3D. It takes place shortly in a couple years after Sense 1. I've started writing it. I've started concepting characters and stuff like that in the short, very little time I have outside of finishing Sense 1. But it's going to take a long time to develop. And it's one of those things where in order to make it the game that I want it to be, which is effectively a Fatal Frame, but minus the camera. So just get rid of the camera aspect and think a traditional PS2 era, Dreamcast era survival horror. Fixed cameras, full 3D, and just think of anybody who wants to search Kowloon Walled City. You'll be right. You'll understand exactly where I'm going with this and what we want to do and what we want to achieve. So Kowloon Walled City on crack and a survival horror game. It's going, what I've started working on is big. Hence why I said, if we need that support now to build a studio big enough to actually achieve that. And Sense 1 will hopefully help us along that path and get started. That said, that's a long-term project. That's going to be like 3, 4, maybe 5, hopefully not, but probably around 5 years. Sense 1 will be done. I have ideas for how to kind of keep Sense, the IP itself, alive while we're developing Sense 2. But the next thing I want to do something that is a little more fun and ridiculous, because the stuff that happens in Sense 1, some of the things I had to research and write, and we're heavy, and it's dark. So I wanted something that's a little more fun, happy. I mentioned the beach volleyball game. I might do that. There's a brawler I really want to make. We want to make something easy and simple between those 2 projects.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe something just to keep income coming in and have just be fun. Maybe just a simple digital game. If people really like it, we'll do a physical. But I'm not sure yet. I bounce around projects sometimes where I'm like, I want to do this. But I have 5 or 6 games, plotted out where I'm going. It could be any of these. But Sense 2 is our next core project, and that's going to be a big undertaking where we're going to need way more money, way more people. And what my ideal is, we're working on it now. We have my wife and I, she's a 3D artist. So we're working on I guess you could call it like a proof of concept, like an environmental piece where you'll be able to see what we're thinking. And maybe in a year or so that'll be ready and we can kind of start showing things and being like, this is what we want. I don't want to do Kickstarter again. I'd really like to avoid Kickstarter if I can. Not that it wasn't an amazing thing for us and it didn't, give us the funding. It's just really stressful and really,
a lot of work.
It's work and it's exhausting. I've never been that exhausted in my life from doing so little for 30 days, because you're just sitting there waiting, stressed, and then you have to write updates every couple days, if not every day, like we did. And then there was there's that like last 10 days where you're like, oh man, how much more is it going to make? And then by the time you hit the end of the thing, we obviously had a really successful Kickstarter, but then at the end I was just like, I was tanked for, I think I slept like 3 days straight. Like just,
Nice.
I would wake up, get food, and then go back to bed because I was just done. And I don't want to do that again. I'd also like to be successful enough with our current game that we don't have to ask for more money. But we'll see where things go and see how it goes. So please buy Sense, everybody. Please buy it when it comes out. Pre-order it now if you want.
It's on Steam. It's on Switch.
It is.
And so I'm not sure how much details you can actually give. What's going on with the Vita release? I'm a Vita guy. Sorry. Like I gotta ask, because like the Vita's in this weird state, and I think this is gonna probably be my last question because
it's getting late.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I personally get nervous about this stuff because I wouldn't want to be sitting here today saying something, and then regardless of what I say, Sony decides something else. So please understand that everything that we say is caveated by if Sony doesn't do something really mean. So
prefacing, this is what is said here is dependent on Sony. This is what these guys would like and are doing. What they cannot control Sony. Sony has already dropped the
right
enough.
Right. So as far as this moment, 9:00 p.m. on Tuesday, September, whatever the hell it is, 2019. Yeah. I would say we have our dev kits. We have gotten it running, I believe. My publisher and my coder are handling that, and I see screenshots sometimes, but I don't ask because I let them handle it because I don't need that stress.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I know, we've gotten it we've gotten it onto the Vita dev kit. So PS4 is not going to be an issue. So anybody worried about PS4, don't unless the censorship thing happens or something like that. But we've already addressed that. If we have to censor for Sony's platforms, you will get a PC copy for free. Not physical. We'll give you a digital PC copy for free, and you'll be able to play the uncensored version that way. But if Sony demands it, at this point we just have to. I'm not happy about it if that's what they choose. I don't think we'll have that problem because there's nothing in the game that would warrant that problem. But you never know. You never know how with the way things are lately. So we seem to be perfectly good to go for the Vita release. I think we've started allowing pre-orders on BackerKit. I'm fairly certain.
I believe so. Don't quote me on that.
I'm fairly certain. I haven't. I check occasionally, but I let Joe and them handle it usually. So, we're good to go on Vita. We're good to go on PS4. If PS5 is a reality, then I mean it's obviously a reality. But if that's something that people want from us, we'll make that happen too. I have no worries personally about anything keeping any of those platforms from happening. But like we said, on the off chance that Sony decides to be really mean to us, then we will make sure that everyone who backed for it gets a copy of the game in a better version, which might be Switch. But hopefully not. Hopefully everything will be okay. I'm a big Vita fan. I'm a Sony fan. I was up until a couple months ago.
Until recently.
Yeah, until they kicked me out the door. But so I feel their pain, and I'm doing everything I can to make sure things stay on track. So again, we have it running on a Vita. I'm fairly positive. So it's just still a little bit early. And I think I can say this. East Asia Soft is handling our production. So we'll be running all of our physical carts through them. I think our post pre-order sales will be through them, and Play Asia, I believe. Don't quote me on that. I might get in trouble for saying it, but I'll tell you if you have to edit that out.
Okay.
But it should be good. Nobody should be worried except for me.
Good to know, because I'll be honest, the way I actually found out about your game, and then this is a little side story. Most people talk about how they don't go to forums. I actually found out about Sense from the Game FAQs Vita forums.
Shit, really?
Somebody posted a link saying, "Hey, this is because I've been collecting for the Vita because I'm a physical collector." And so my thing was, I want to get all these physical games before all these go away, because it's a thing. Dying platform. You can, the way Sony treated the Vita over the last like 3 years, you can just kind of look at it and be like, that's going to be killed off soon. So I went there and someone mentioned this and I saw that and I'm like, I like Cyberpunk. I like the themes. I like the art design. I like everything. Here's my money. So
well, thank you.
So do note that people still do go to forums.
Oh, I actually do too. I occasionally scroll through when I have the time. I'll scroll through, game FAQs, but I never paid attention to the Vita thing for some reason. I don't do Reddit though. No one ask me to do it. Please don't. I stay away from Reddit. I stay away from Reset Era. I stay away from what's the new Reset Era?
I would prefer just to. I don't have a high opinion of social. Let's just put it that
way. I stay away from everything that could get me in trouble. I stay away from. So that's my general rule of thumb for life.
But Benjamin, I appreciate the time. I appreciate the work you're putting in. I cannot wait for Sense to come out. Early 2020 is the tentative currently.
Semi-tentative. My internal deadline that everybody's yelling at me to meet is to be completely finished, all art assets and everything by February. So we should be. It depends on the SRB what the actual date will be, but we're fairly confident that it'll be out by April.
So people will just leave it at early 2020 according to the Steam page and call it good, so that way nobody gets in trouble.
Yes, early 2020.
I appreciate the time. I always enjoy these interviews to kind of get to know the devs and how they see things. It's always nice to kind of get behind the curtain as a gamer, because far too often the industry lacks this weird thing called transparency, and I appreciate you being transparent and willing to have, for some people, which would be uncomfortable discussions and pain points in the industry too. So look forward to Sense. Guys, go order it, pre-order it, pick your platform. It's there. If you're a Linux gamer, go poke in the Steam forums. Go now. And again, thank you, Benjamin. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, man.
And much success to Sense. I know I'll be playing the hell out of it.
Thank you very much.
And with that, we are